Thanks for staying with Eye on Ocean County. I'm Laura Jones. Our guest this half hour is Deborah Howlett. She is president of New Jersey Policy Perspective. We've been talking about capping property taxes, which is what the governor called for immediately after passing the budget. We haven't talked about the budget. It's a $28.4 billion budget. That's less than it's been in a number of years. Republicans said no tax increases. Democrats said, well, the cuts, they pretty much add up to tax increases. One area that Democrats were not happy about is the millionaire's tax. And the governor said, this budget, I want a millionaire's tax in this budget. And the Democrats said, we're not going to have a budget without a millionaire's tax. And lo and behold, Christie got what he wanted. Your take?
There is a budget without a millionaire's tax. I think that's a mistake on the governor's part. I think there were some critical program cuts. I understand he was on the whole no new taxes binge, but there were some critical cuts that he made to, especially to school aid and municipal aid, that are going to be very detrimental. And I think in combination with the property tax caps, the school cuts are just devastating. $1.2 billion in state aid to school being cut. That's a 12% hit just on schools. And there was some room. Had there been a millionaire's tax, I think senior citizens are going to get hit too, because along with the school aid cuts, he did away with property tax rebates. Right. And for a lot of folks,
September or October, you're not going to be getting that check in the mail, and
right.
that might be really when people think of that as part of their income.
If you pay $6,000 a year in property taxes and you don't get that $600
right.
property tax rebate check, that's a 10% increase in your property taxes, even though there's a 2% cap on the property tax increase. So I think that the Democrats targeted an increase, a temporary one-year increase in the millionaire's tax to restore the rebates for seniors, and I think it was a mistake not to do that. There were also some social safety net programs that weren't cut. The Anti-Poverty Network had identified 26 programs, and I think Christie actually restored the cuts that he made to 3 or 4 of them. There is $7.5 million for family planning that the legislature had to enact separately. It's a 9-to-1 federal match. So for every dollar that in state aid, there's $9 in federal aid, and it goes to 58 family planning clinics around the state.
Yeah, that was an interesting debate that was happening
yes.
when the legislature was debating the budget in the Senate. I know that it was approved, a veto-proof majority
right.
about this family planning money that had not been included in the budget.
And I think there were a few votes short in the Assembly of a veto proof. But there was a lot of confusion about whether the money would go to fund abortions. And,
right, to go to Planned Parenthood.
Because it does go to Planned Parenthood, and it goes to the clinics. And the confusion is that federal money can't be used to pay for abortion. So there was no chance that that was happening. And what it does pay for is sort of basic health care for women who otherwise couldn't afford it. You're talking about mammograms, PAPs,
right.
health programs. And it's usually younger women who don't have any other health insurance or any other means. Barbara Bono in the Budget right. Committee actually made a very eloquent plea for it, saying that when she was in college at Montclair State, that was the only doctor she ever saw was going to the clinic on campus, and she went there for her yearly checkups and routine health care. That'll otherwise end up in emergency rooms now. Those women have no other choice. And I think there was something like 75,000 mammograms a year that those clinics provide. So I think the governor eventually signs that legislation. He has 45 days to do it, which he's pointed out, and the Women's Caucus in the legislature
right.
has asked him to move a little more expeditiously.
And the Women's Caucus, that's not Democrat, that's not Republican.
No.
It's the women. So all of the women seem
and I
to be
think
on
they were
board.
joined by several men at their news conference, too.
Several men.
So I think there is a veto-proof majority in both chambers when push comes to shove. So I think the governor ends up signing it. I don't think he picks a fight over it. Right. But I think he had a chance to make his point on that.
Right. Well, overall, in the budget, do you think, were there any winners? Were there losers? You know, when you look at this, it's a $28.4 billion budget. Does it cut spending? Do you think it cuts spending?
Oh, I know it doesn't. If you look at the governor's March figures, it's lower than the last budget.
Right. So you would
budget
think, well,
to budget,
that
it's
means
lower.
you.
But in terms of the actual amount that was spent last year, there's something less than $27.7 billion. In March, that was the last estimate of the spending, and that came from the Christie administration in their budget in brief. So the state is spending less than $27.7 billion, and This budget proposes spending 28.4.
Okay.
So that's a $700 million increase in spending. So to say that it's a budget cut is not true. At the same time, the last 3 years have been horrendous, and the budget is now the lowest spending total since 2005.
Right, since the McGreevey years.
You know, it might have gone up a tick, but it's still down below what it has been for the last 5 years, and that's because tax revenues are off. The income tax revenues are off because unemployment is down. Sales tax revenues are off because sales are down. And one of the things that we advocate is a look at the tax structure in New Jersey and where the money goes. Because while New Jersey has the highest property taxes in the nation, New Jersey has the lowest gas tax, some of the lowest income tax. You'll hear Republicans talk about the income tax rate in New Jersey, which is high at the very top end. But if you make $190,000 or less, it's cheaper to live in New Jersey, income tax-wise, than in Pennsylvania. And in New York, it's $230,000. So if anybody making under $200,000 is getting a deal on their income taxes in New Jersey, there's just no other way around it.
In this tri-state area, that is.
Yeah, in the tri-state area, which is what you have to compare it to because, you know, it's a lot different than, you know, Arkansas or
living
Mississippi.
down south, exactly, which I used
But
to.
I think the winners in the budget were the millionaires who effectively got a tax cut because the millionaires' tax surcharge was not extended another year. Corporations got some tax cuts. But the big winner in the budget was Governor Christie, clearly. He got almost everything he wanted. In a way that Democratic governors haven't been able to get from the Democratic legislature.
From their own legislature, yeah.
So the Democrats went along with more of what Chris Christie wanted to do than they have with past Democratic governors, Corzine, Cody, even McGreevey, which is kind of an interesting turn of events.
It is. I mean, you followed politics. You were part of the Corzine administration as communications director. Prior to that, you had a career at the Ledger. So you followed this. This is a very. He said he was going to turn Trenton upside down, and they are definitely things are turned upside down.
It's an odd situation that we're in. I don't know what happens in the future, but for his first budget, clearly he had command of it and he got what he wanted. And there is some sense from the Democrats that, okay, if you give him enough rope, he'll hang himself. So they're going to campaign against him and say, look, this is the budget he wanted. This is what he got. And there are layoffs of teachers and police and nurses and other people because of this budget. And is that really what you want in Trenton? And
2011 is when the legislature will be up for re-election. There's going to be redistricting, so that will be interesting to see if they run on that. The Democrats made it clear, listen, this is the governor's budget. He wanted it. Right. He got it. The Republican minority, had to propose it, and the minimum number of Democrats signed on with it, and they weren't happy about that.
4 in the Senate and 7 in the Assembly?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, they weren't happy about that.
No. And they allowed, it's interesting, some of the Democrats who might be in more conservative districts, Jeff Van Drew down south, was happy to vote for the budget. So there were a few Democrats who were okay with the ideas that Christie espoused, but for the most part, there were not a lot of happy campers in the Democratic caucuses last week.
And the Assembly Speaker, Sheila Oliver, voted for the budget.
Yes, she did.
Yeah, that was kind of surprising to me when I heard that she was going to be voting for it.
I think there was a sense that in the caucus that if they were going to be forced to do it, the leadership should actually lead and take the lead in that and vote for it.
Not so much in the Senate.
Not on the Senate side, I guess.
Not so much. All right, we're going to continue our conversation with Deborah Howlett, president of New Jersey Policy Perspective, here on Eye on Ocean County. Stay with us.